Today is a method that can be done without eviscerating the animal. It's the gutless method. Even though we took the guts out of the deer to get them cooled down, the reason we do that is to get the body temperature down. All those guts inside the deer hold that temperature. A deer's natural temperature is 102 degrees. You want to get it down to where bacteria stops forming, like somewhere around 40, 50 degrees, and really starts slowing down. One thing to always consider is bacteria multiplies at room temperature, 70 degrees, every 20 minutes. It doubles. So bacteria starts with a little bit and turns into a whole lot real quick. And how you'd spot that is the meat won't appear red. It'll be like a dark color when it starts forming, and it'll start forming in the outer skin. On a deer, when you lift the leg and you're like, is the deer still good? Was the temperature too hot last night? You'll look at this, so maybe this one still has it. Okay, you'll be looking like right here, and it'll actually look green coming through the belly skin. And that'll be a quick indicator, and its smell. Unfortunately, you're not going to recognize that smell on the meat until you actually find one that is just too far gone. So these are things you want to watch for, and getting it cooled. Evisceration is a quick way to get it cooled. Opening up the legs, these are the biggest muscle groups. That's going to hold a lot of heat. So opening these up, most people, 90+%, are going to gut a deer like this. They're going to remove that flap of skin, and they're going to cut through here. And I'm going to tell you, not necessary, because what this does when you're dragging deer and you're not putting them in carts, drag deer, look at all this debris, pine needles, leaves, grit, dirt. You're compromising some of the finest meat that this deer has to offer. That stuff's going to have to be cut away. That introduces bacteria to meat. You have a pristine, nice enclosed thing in skin. Why not leave it? This isn't necessary to cool meat in most instances, especially if you can get it in some refrigeration, or you're using the method that we're going to use today, where we're going to debone the deer. There you go. Okay, I just noticed that. So, what else? I guess that's it. I guess we'll get started. Always remember to tag your deer. And when I go to recovery, always enough time. We talked about that yesterday, giving time and the importance of listening. The one thing that always goes with me on a tracking job is what I call my go bag. You're a shot, going to recover it, a headlamp. I have a spare flashlight that's really bright in my pocket, so I always go with a headlamp and then a really bright LED light. LEDs are nice because you're going to get a lot more battery life out of an LED technology light than you would out of something out of regular batteries, and typically they're a lot brighter. So if you haven't upgraded to that, I would strongly suggest, thinking about a upgrade, because lights are paramount, as some of you may have seen last night in picking up those fine little minute pieces of blood. Bright light is going to get it done. So what I use, what I have, this is a meat bag. I'm going to open this up. Get rid of these, boogered up. This is an option for when you're deboning it, if you're doing this in the field, because you don't want to take all this mess home with you. You don't want to take the hide, the ticks, all the waste. What do you do with it? Scare your trash man, stinks in your garbage because you shot it Wednesday and it's not till next Wednesday when your garbage picking up. In Pennsylvania, not so much here, but on state game lands, you're allowed to leave the deer there, all the portions of, as long as the edible parts were removed. And I'm going to show you what the minimum that needs to be taken off the deer to qualify for edible parts removed today. So what I transported in is a cheesecloth bag. Essentially, it's like a big pillowcase, very stretchy, and has a lot of soppability where it can absorb that blood. And this is where I put all the debone meat. I take this and I don't lay it on the ground in the dirt, because dirt gets through the membrane on this, because it's just a cheesecloth fine bag. So what I like to use, which you should always have on you anyway, invest in one of these. It's a Mylar emergency blanket, folds out, at least my wingspan is probably like 8 feet by 4 feet. Serves in an emergency situation as a thermal covering that you can wrap around it. I can tell you this product has saved my life. I am here today because I have emergency blankets on me all the time. This is how you beat hypothermia and an injury. But what it also does is you take this, unfold it, cut it in half down the middle, lay it on the ground, and you have a pristine, clean work surface like a table that you can take the meat when you remove it from the deer and lay it on top. And that's what I do with the Mylar. And then I take my meat bag and I set it right in the middle. I find a stone or a log, set the corners because it blows away real nice, and now everything is sanitary. You couldn't have a more clean environment to process the deer. It kind of simulates what you're seeing today with picnic tables. But keep in mind, I don't take a picnic table, but a tailgate works like a picnic table if you get it back to your truck. It's nice to work up here, but most times when I'm doing this, I'm crawling around on my knees, and I'm doing it like that.
I got a question.
Sure.
So suppose you tag your deer, and you're going to do the method you do.
Yeah.
Do you leave your tag in the deer?
Your deer, once it's processed, the tag goes with the edible parts.
Okay, so you cut the deer.
But if you're leaving, and I'm going to show you how to take the head off with just a knife, just a little tiny knife. We're going to do that later. And you can leave with the head, and then the tag can stay with the head. But if you're leaving this as a doe, leaving the head, tag comes off and stays with the head. And you can take that bag meat with that tag to the butcher and say, here you go, can you finish the job for me? And then you can take that, lay it in a container, you get home, slides right in your fridge. Every deer, both of these deer, will easily fit in this pen. Completely deboned. If we took all the edible portions off of that deer, it would still fit in this pen. This is a lot easier to carry than that. You don't need a garage. This is an alternative method. If you don't want to put the mess in your car and you just want to be done with it, because the luxury is this is getting cool in your refrigerator and you've got the temperature down. And now you have days to take your time to go through the meat, trim, and the difference is between you doing it and someone else doing it. No one's going to put the love and care into the meat that you eat. You are going to be eating choice venison as opposed to, I guess, just regular grade. And the difference is the trimming, removing the fats, cutting against the grain, and that's what I'm going to show you, how you take your level of venison to top shelf choice grade, because you're taking the time and care, and you're not just throwing everything in the brine because you don't have time to trim away the fat portions of the deer. So finishing up going through the bag here, I always have my tags in my bag. If any of you have these, this is like a mystery to people. I didn't know it either. This is actually a pen, it's not a needle. A little tiny mini pen. These are really handy. Or I just give these out for free. I should probably bring a bunch of these and give them to John Heinz so you have them. Neat little thing that we have. I always have rubber gloves. I always have some bags in there, Ziploc bags, because I like to take the heart. Heart's a muscle, trim off the fat. That's one of the first things I eat from the deer is the heart meat, fried with peppers and onions. I really enjoy it. So that always goes in the bag with me. And then you'll see like I have a liquor store bag in here. By far, liquor store bags are superior to all other bags because heavy stuff goes in them. They don't tear like regular shopping bags. That's what I save them for. They go in here because I can put a head in there. If I find mushrooms on the trail, they always go, and it's a nice big sturdy bag. So I always have some of those with me also. And then paracord, I never go anywhere without paracord in case I gotta repair something. There's a fire starting ability to this. I always have a small section of paracord if I want to tie something up for any reason, or if I want to drag the deer or just get it off the ground for some reason. And this is my go-to. I go everywhere with baler twine. This is my dragon rope. I take this and then I throw it away. I have piles of this stuff at home, but what I do is I just take this, make a little loop, tie it around the ears, and I drag it. Because when you're dragging a deer, if you are choosing that method and not this, or just trying to move it to another location where it's more feasible to work on, you'd always drag with the hair. You can see the hair has direction to it. You drag from head to tail, easy drag. Reverse, grab the two legs, you're working a lot hard because friction's pulling on all this skin, gripping, grabbing everything. So my preferred method is to always grab, drag from the head. And that's what I use this for. Always have hand warmers. And then another important thing that saved me many times, I have batteries to everything that I have in the field with me. Headlamp batteries, my super bright flashlight that I use for tracking, and then one for my rangefinder. If you have this always with you, it will prevent that day when you get up there and you start ranging stuff in the morning like, oh no, I guarantee you're gonna see a monster buck that day at 37 yards or 43 yards or something weird that you would have liked it. No, it's very important, plan ahead. I always have zip ties with me. And one thing that I always like to have with me is at least one of these little reflectors. The reason I do this, I find a deer, I was tracking with that, I still have my tree stand back. I can leave one of these at my tree stand to find it in the dark quickly, because as you'll find, it's very disorienting in the dark to follow the blood trail back to your point of origin. And then you gotta follow it back to where the deer is in the dark. Sometimes everything really looks similar and the same. You take one of these, put it on a tree. Now you can see that a really long way. The other thing you can do, if you wanted it higher, you wanted to get above stuff, you bend the tree down, flip it on, send it up. Now you can see it above everything, like in a field setting or something like that. Real handy thing to help you quickly get back to your deer when you're coming back to work on it and connect your deer with your hunting location. Also good for flagging trails, finding, as you see, we have some reflectors on the trail here. And then you hunt by yourself. I always like to have a little tripod to put a camera on so I can take a little selfie with my deer. Picture something big, that's what this is. Yeah, hook that onto my camera, screw it in there. There's some flagging tape on one, I have duct tape on another leg, and then some electrical tape on the other. So this is, with this bag, I can just about handle any situation that I'm gonna come across
Can you leave,
with the
leave
deer.
it out so I can take pictures?
Sure. These are readily available. I think this came from Cabela's. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything that I take with me every time I go out, and that's all you need. And of course, the most important thing that we left out is the knife. A lot of people, I usually bring big knives and stuff with me, but you can visualize. You don't need a big Bowie knife. You don't need a 6-inch blade. You don't need a pointy blade. Got a deer, and you don't need it to debone either. So I'm going to show you the difference between two blades. Brand new razor sharp scalpel. 1.5 inches, no point on it. Most cuts are pokes. It's usually the point that you're not able to think about, and that's what usually gets you. Every time I cut myself doing anything, it was always with this darn blade. It's a 60 blade or a big knife. It's the point that gets you, and it's usually a poke that goes in. This eliminates the poke. It's a very nice skinning tool. It's harder to go through the hide because you're cutting with the edge of the knife and you're not using the point as much. Point is nice for certain applications, but I don't like it. I like the safety that this brings because I've only cut myself once with this. When I was deboning a moose, because I was using the blade, it was dull, the guys with me, change the blade, you're gonna cut yourself, change the blade, you're gonna cut yourself, because the dull blade will cut you worse than a sharp blade because you're fighting the knife. And when you feel yourself fighting and pushing too hard, that's when you can just pull another one out and either sharpen or put a new blade on. So, and that's what I did, and I was cutting through some tendon, and I put it right into the palm of my hand, and I was like, how far? I'm like, I think it went all the way. It tickled bone. And then I thought we were gonna give myself stitches in the field. We were able to patch it up, bandage it real good because it was on a hard angle. But boy, does that take a long time to heal when you slice the palm of your hand open. So you see that in the movies when people are like doing that blood brother stuff. Like that takes like over a month to heal. Not realistic. I don't believe people actually did that. And if they did, they were complete idiots. Because the infection, the pain you feel every day, everything you touch, that is the worst place to cut yourself. So I'm gonna get rid of this dangerous blade, or I can give it to you if you're up for the challenge, if you want to demonstrate a poke as opposed to a cut or both. Yeah, we're not gonna do that to you. So we're gonna put this in here. I just wanted to show you, just so you know, when you purchase something. This is a Havel makes 22 XT blade. XT is extra tough steel, less prone to snapping. And that's a 60 blade, they come standard. These are special order, and they're worth it. So we're about $1 a blade. You have razor sharp every single time. Do you have a preference? Favorite color? Okay. They're both the same color anyway. All right, I'm just going to package this up, put this away so it's out of the way, and we're gonna get started. Show up. That's okay. All right, so if no one doesn't show up, I'm going to be asking somebody here shortly who's familiar with a Blackstone grill? Anybody? Feel comfortable cooking for us on a Blackstone today?
Yeah.
And you're the man.
Yeah.
You're going to feed everybody today.
Okay, let's do it.
If you're okay with, I've got seasoning options here for you. I've got some trays, got a cutting board, I got a thermometer, unless you know about where it's safe to eat. It's a real skill. Nolan just showed up.
I've been here, man. Oh, Nolan?
You guys are working together. How does that sound?
Okay.
All right, you guys are working together to make this happen.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull a back strap out of there. I'm gonna clean it up, and then you guys are gonna season it and work it together to serve everybody the loin that we're gonna pull from this thing in about 5 minutes. So time frame, how long does it take? It could easily take an hour to drag a deer back to your car. I've seen people very proud of themselves that drug a deer for 3 miles. And I would not be proud of that. I would think you're an idiot because your back is gonna hurt. You only have one back. The reason my back is messed up, besides accidents and things that I have, I blame the deer. Dragging deer is really hard physically. It's not natural. It's a good way to injure yourself. Dragging a 100-pound deer is probably about 85, 90 pounds, or 150-pound buck. You can get that down. That deer is about 40 pounds worth of meat that you can carry out in that little sack. And what I often do is I just tie a little handle in that sack, invert it, and I'll walk out with it just in my hand. I'll carry a deer out literally in my hand like carrying a piece of luggage, or I'll stuff it in a pack if I'm in really far, or tie it to the back of my tree stand and carry it out. So let me glove up here, and we're gonna get started. What's your name? Laura today is being very brave. I'm super proud of her. I've always wanted somebody to do this. That she is going to demonstrate, somebody that's never done this before. And she's going to give you the confidence to give this a try so you can see that it can be done by anybody. I'm going to get ahead of her a little bit so that you guys can all get back in the woods, and then we're going to work together to process her deer completely. One thing I wanted to point out is flies.
I second you, super proud of her, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. That was you today. Good job. Good job. It's a lot to stand to people and have people watch you doing anything. So, you're wondering what the torch is for. I'm just going to show you real quick because I'm going to start using it here. Torch is a fly remover. I use this sometimes when today's presentation you might see some stuff. Oh, you can eat that. You can eat this. You can get all the red meat out. You can do a lot with the deer. But you can also get back to wildlife to some extent. The less than choice edible components, the rib meat for instance, stuff from a gut shot deer, things that you're not going to utilize are going to be used by wildlife. You have migratory birds that are coming through that are relying on these reserves on the landscape to continue their migration. Foxes, coyotes, lots of different fur bearers rely on that meat source. And it feeds flies, which feed other things. Everything's recycled. I'm not telling you terrible parts of the landscape. Still is a way to kind of give back to wildlife. And that's another reason doing this as opposed to this going and rotting in the landfill. It never really gets recycled by natural processes. So I'm a real fan of giving it back. The other thing I'm a real fan of is the concerns that CWD bring on the landscape now, chronic wasting disease. The way we're going to show you to cut today is going to remove the edible parts without exposing any of the high-risk parts, like the lymph nodes we're going to extract. We're not going to touch any spinal fluids. We know we're going to use the brain last, like cutting across the head so the blade isn't in contact. And then you're leaving all those parts and you're only taking deboned meat back home with you. So the disease, if it did have it and you decided to send the head off for testing, it stays at the place of origin. You didn't bring it home, you didn't mobilize it, it didn't go somewhere else. It's a nice way to slow the process of expansion that we're seeing with CWD expanding every year across the landscape. So, as I was talking about the direction of the deer and the fur, if you want less hair shed, you go with the grain, you go with the way that the hair is situated on the deer. So if I started at the tail and went to the head, I'm going to shed 4 times as much hair because you're cutting through hairs. But when you go through it, it just splits between the hairs and does a really nice job, and you're going to see it's not going to be very dirty at all. So what I like to do is to start kind of at the base of the neck, just with an incision, small little slice. See how easy that went in? Invert the blade, facing out, and I'm going right along the backbone to there. So this is what you're going to be doing. Okay, this is your start. If you want to try to take that leg off to see what it's like, you can, or we can do that together later. It's up to you.
I'll start now.
Okay? And all I'm doing is just going up and I'm zipping right along his back. And I'm not going very deep. I'm just going underneath the hide, taking my time. But if you go a little deeper, that's okay. Just try to keep it centered. So I'm right along the back here, just going along. Okay? And now I'm going to meet part where the brown touches the white. Gonna cut around the tail and go right along that transition zone between brown and white. Okay. Second here. And I'll make it look easy, and it's okay because everyone's gonna struggle the first time. The one option you don't have at this point, you're committed, you're not giving up, no matter what. Now I'm just pulling this hair back. And if you notice, how much hair do you see on the table? Not very much at all, right? If I would have cut it the other way, it would be a mess. And this is what you guys are going to be eating here, and it's going to go on the grill. If somebody wants to start the grill and start warming it up, you probably can. If you want to clean it up and get that rolling, Nolan, that would be great. Trick. I wanted to let you know. I just did it without telling you. You can pull. Pulling's hard. Everybody has a lot more strength in a curl. You go like this. Wait, watch this. See how I could just curl it in? I can pull this, but look at that. That's easy. That's not exhausting. To just use that little curling motion is a great way to separate skin. It gets it done fast without a lot of strenuous effort on your wrist, because everyone's a lot stronger doing that motion than pulling or scraping. You're gonna get a lot of finger fatigue. So, next step is, I'll show you this. If you wanna try it, but we'll get back to it later, is we're gonna extract the loin. But I'm just gonna clean up the hair real quick because we're gonna be eating this. And I'm not cooking meat, I'm not torching, I'm not having too much fun with fire, but now we have no hair to eat. It's that simple. Now I'm just gonna separate along the back here, where the scapula is from the shoulder blade. This is the loin muscle. And now I'm wondering, well, where does the loin start and where does the rump roast begin? It's right at this hard bone. Even on a really fatty deer, you'll feel soft, hard bone. At that hard bone is where your back strap or your loin starts. So I cut in at that bone. I'll cut back at a little bit of an angle, as you can see. Cut through this tissue right here along the backbone. Okay, see, I'm just cutting right along the backbone. I don't need it. Oh, you might need a knife for a second. And then I just do this. No more knife. Everything's coming right off the bone, just with my fingers. The only cut I made was that little incision there. Watch how nice this is gonna be. Just perfect meat and ribs. Now I can peel that off. That's how easy it is to get a back strap out. One cut in the right location, and with the knife, you're not gonna do a cleaner job than that, because these ribs are all in. You can see little pieces of connective tissue and meat, but that's okay, because look how pristine and nice that piece of meat is. You do it that good, you're gonna get an applause. That's like doing a magic trick when people see that, because some people cut down that spine, cut it all in half, fillet it out. There's no need. You're gonna get a much more meat just by doing it that way. And then this part is just like filleting a fish. You got two knife options. You notice I switch knives. This is when I go to one of two options. I don't like this option, but some people ergonomically this works for them. This is a curved boning knife, stiff boning knife, and this is a straight semi-stiff boning knife. I like this in a 7-inch. This, from working so much, is like an extension of my finger. I could work this with my eyes closed. But some people like the preferred little curve. It's your choice, but this is always my go-to. That's my knife for everybody else. When I do this, normally I'll portion it. So a back strap like this, I'm a big eater, big guy. I do halves, but you can make your portions to what size you want. So you plan ahead. Is it 3? Are you a little tiny eater? You're gonna do 4? But we're gonna do half and half today right on the grill. I cut, but I'm not, notice I'm not doing this. I'm kind of pushing the blade down because there's connective tissue in there that is a lot tougher than your teeth. And then just like filleting a fish, going tight to the board, and that's it. We're gonna trim that up a little better, and then we're gonna do the other way. All right, I should have sharpened my knife better. It's a little. And And then I'm just going to trim this up and they're going to season it. This little piece here has some connective meat. I usually grind that. I take that off because it's just going to make for a better meat. So see how I'm just peeling off that membrane? That's a tough little section of the loin. I take that off. That would go in my grind pile. And then I'm just going to trim this up, take a little bit of connective tissue off. Nope, too much. That one's done. You guys can make this. Okay? Season that. Get the grill going. Get it on there. Throw some bacon up on there. And we're going to do the same thing here. So one thing I like to do, there's always a little piece that stays right there. That's a tough little piece to chew off. That little piece that can go in your grind pile, of course. Rather than cutting like this, I like to just slip the blade underneath and do it like that. That wastes nothing. See, leaving a little piece like that, I can take that off just by sliding the blade underneath it, rather than cutting it out and taking more meat with it. And I'm just going to do the same thing here. And you could take it, and I'm just doing this just because it's going to be more tender. We could cook it just like this, but we're going to give you the difference between standard grade and choice. By removing all that tough meat, we just took it to the level of choice. That's going to be a very tender piece of meat. We're going to give this to you. All right. Mix it up, man. You're the chef. I don't want any credit, because if it sucks, you get all the blame. All right? How you doing? Oh, you got it all. Good job. Was it weird when you feel that little crackle when you turn it? It's a little bit strange. It really kind of goes through the first couple times. Yeah,
I saw it in your face.
all right, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to skin this down a little further. And for me, talking, doing this, it takes me about 20 minutes to do half a deer on one side. For some people, this could be very intimidating. It's a very large muscle group broken into pretty much 4 big, large muscles. And you look at that and you're just like, where the heck do I start with this? And people have all kinds of techniques of just running the blade, hacking. I like to remove the larger muscle groups so everything's attached, so I'm maximizing lean muscle masses. So I like to start right in the middle. Just remember, where do I start? Right in the middle. See that line right there? That's where you do a little shallow cut. Little shallow cut, little ingestion. That's why I'm hiccuping a little bit here. And you see, this is a separation between 2 whole muscle groups. So what I'm looking at here is called the bottom round, which is attached to the eye of the round. Okay. So what I'm doing here is just using my finger to tell me where to cut. See, my finger's coming through there. Okay, I'm not sure of myself. I get behind it. Oh, it comes out there. I'm actually not cutting. I'm just separating connective tissue, because these muscles aren't attached to each other except at one point, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit. Same thing up here. Where do I go? Look at, see how my thumb's right through there? Oh, I know I got to cut that way. And I come down to here. So all I'm doing is, I didn't cut through any muscle. I'm cutting between the muscle and getting that connective tissue separated. Here's the one place it gets a little tricky. If you want to take the eye of the round out with it. Eye of the round is this little piece of meat right here. It's a very tough piece of meat, but we're going to cook that for you today and show you how tender you can make it. So I take that eye of the round and I slide underneath the hock and I just separate it. I'm not cutting through it, there's just a connection there that I take out. That's pretty much it. Now you see how I'm coming through? Right here, right along that white line. That's where the separation is, where it goes white to dark. Come right along here. Oh. And then there's a little like triangular part of the pelvis where you hit bone and you stop. Now you're at your end. Show you the gland. There's one gland in here. Using this technique is going to allow you not to cut through that gland, which is very important if we're looking at like a CWD area. You don't want the glandular excretions getting into your meat tissue. So I'm just cutting through here right around the pelvis bone. It's almost like a little triangle right here that you just cut around. That's the only place where I'm cutting through any connective tissue or meat. Everything else is between muscle groups. So what this is
Could you also point to the gland that you mentioned?
No, I'm gonna show you that.
Okay.
Bottom round, either round. Two muscle groups. I'm gonna separate that once you get something on the grill here. But what we're looking at here is the magical femoral artery that everyone's like, oh, I think I got the femoral artery. It's definitely done. Just want to show you how lucky you are when you hit a femoral artery. This is the femoral artery. This gland right here is attached to the femoral artery, and that's pretty much what you're aiming. We're talking soda straw, even smaller, running right there. You shoot here, you shoot here, you don't have a deer. You have a deer with a big butt wound that's going to get away from it. This is a very lucky hit. Easier to accomplish with a rifle. With an arrow, it's very, very lucky. Very unlikely that you should have any comfort. If you hit here and you're praying for the femoral artery, you got lucky. So that's the femoral artery. It's literally that tiny, and that's what we cut around when we did that. So the next thing I like to do is I just take off this hock meat. It's the hock, half of the deer. Nice full muscle group, large muscle. I just cut that. I just kind of like to get it out of my way. And you're just going high and low, taking it off as one whole muscle. Ground meat. That's what you do with the, I do with the hocks. All right, and then when you get into here, now we're going to take out rump roast. That's right here. Tender piece of meat, but it has some connective tissues and membranes between it, which we can separate out. So when I get the rump roast, I cut here, right off of that little joint. That's, you know, that's that main joint in the pelvis there, where the femur attaches. And I just take off this rump roast right here by working right along the backbone. And this is where your loin ended when you took that off, and your rump roast begins. Because you see that angled little part of the pelvis there. And I'm just cutting through that and taking this off. It's a nice, very, very tender piece of meat. If you want shish kebab cubes, this is the piece of meat to use. Tender. And then that enables you to separate out that connective tissue and the membrane between. But whatever this muscle does, I don't know, maybe just stabilizes the butt somehow, but very tender meat. That would be really good for shish kebabs. That's what I like to do with it on the grill. Okay? Now we're gonna take, we have two pieces left. We remove two main muscle groups. I'm not really counting, you know, back here on that hock muscle. But you have your sirloin, that's right here. And then this is your top round. That's laying in here. That's the butt cheek meat. The cheek meat is lean, massive muscle. Lots of options with that. A lot of people like to make jerky with it because there isn't a lot of connective tissue. It's mostly whole muscle. So what I'm gonna do next here is we are going to just, I'm gonna show you a little trick that I like to do. Okay? Skin this. I could skin this all the way down, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to cut through it here. And I'm going to cut through it here and here. So I'm working on the ground. Okay. And then, see how this bone goes up and then it turns in. So there's a bone right here that turns down. That blade's not going in very far. It's coming along the bone. I'm going to cut like this, right along the bone on the other side to maximize the amount of meat. And then I'm going to come on the front side and I'm going to start working on my sirloin, taking it right around that kneecap there. Show you a little trick in a second because now this leg's in my way from pulling these two large muscle groups out. So all I do is lift the leg. And then I just do this, put my hand here. And I'm just going to turn it out of the way. Now I have everything that's left for me. And that leg is out of my way. So there's a portion in here. You can feel it if you're not sure where that is. I can feel it with my finger if I'm not sure. And it's right there. Now you want to be careful if you're leaving the guts in here, because this is where you're going to turn your meat grain. This is where you want to be precise. Guts are in there. This is where people mess it up. Because I'll show you here in a second. It's a very slim margin for error. Look at that right there. And you're inside the gut cavity and you're releasing all kinds of stank onto your meat. Okay, that's your sirloin. And then when we have left is the nice cheek meat that's here. And that's as simple as just cutting down this part of the pelvis, that little triangle area just outside of the anus. And then we're done. Just gotta get this hair off. See, I like when all this stuff is pristine. I usually leave all that on there. I don't do this. There's usually hair there. See, you got pine needles, got all kinds of dirt, debris. Debris means bacteria, every darn time. So that's that half of the deer. I'm gonna come around and show you how to take the shoulder. We could debone the shoulder, we're gonna work that later. But I'm gonna show you a technique. This is where most people make a mess of a perfectly good, clean deer, because they feel compelled to take a knife and run it through and cut the shoulder out. The best technique that I found is just removing it like a sock. It's just like pulling a sock off. It'll keep your meat clean. You don't shed any hair. And I'm just gonna do this, pull this over. Now, not much neck meat on this deer. There's a lean doe. Lean doe. But there are two nice cuts of meat that run the throat. And we're gonna show you that after we extract the shoulder. Ooh, cut through. And you can take your time. I'm rushing a little bit, but it is amazing how much blood and damage an arrow can make to this part. And it's because of all the layering of the different muscle groups. One of the best training things you could do is take one of these shoulders home with you after I pull it off a deer and practice trimming shoulder meat. That is one of the more time-consuming parts of the deer. I turn all my shoulder into burger. Some people make barbacoa. I don't like the flavor of the fattier portion. This is a lean doe. This would be a really good one for barbacoa because you don't have any of that tallow or fattier component to this deer. So you can see, I believe this was an arrow shot deer, or it was confiscated from, yep, there's a slice right there. So you can see all the hemorrhaging that's trapped between the layers of muscle. Would you eat that? No, this is the stuff you cut away. So everybody always wants to take a hose to deer. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit. I never take a hose to deer. Water to meat just spreads bacteria around. We talked about how fast bacteria spreads. You want to move stuff around. You want to render your tenderloins, which I'm going to show you how to take out, inedible or with a horrible flavor. Just go ahead and try to rinse the deer out. You cut the dirt away. You don't use a hose because you'll get a more effective clean with a knife than you ever will with a hose, spreading dirt and bacteria everywhere. You can't wash bacteria away, but you sure can spread it. Meat's to be washed right before you prepare it for food. So look at how all that gelatinous, blobby, gooey blood got in there. It almost looks like a bullet wound. And that's just all stuff that's trapped in between all that connective tissue of the shoulder. So I cut back here. I'm going to cut along the front here, right across the neck meat. See, it's even all the way up in here. From that wound right here, it's all the way up in the throat. And it's very common. This is what you typically would see with an archery wound. The blood migrates behind the shoulder, and you get a lot of like gooey, gelatinous mess that needs to be cut away. Perfectly normal, and there's plenty of good meat to be salvaged here. But this gooey stuff, I don't put that in my ground meat. I get rid of it. So, need to get this down to there. And you'll see I did not cut the shoulder. And remember when I said the sock technique, I just grab it right here and pull it through. Pristine, zero hair, completely clean. Throw it right on the cutting board. I mean, you're gonna have to cut some of this goo and do some trimming. But if I would have showed you another technique that most people use where they would cut down through the hide, it's an explosion of hair all over inside the meat. That's a real nice, sanitary, clean way to do it. And many times I just pack the shoulder out because it's a lot of work to clean all that up. It doesn't add, it adds a little weight, but to be honest with you, this is a great working surface. This is what I use like on an elk or a moose, a larger animal. This is my cutting board. This is where I'm trimming meat, cutting my load down because I don't want to carry fat out 7 miles just to throw it away, and I sure as heck don't want to carry a bone. On a moose, that could be a 10-pound lighter pack. So, but this is a nice, clean cutting area, that exposed rib cage. That's where I do a lot of my trimming work. If you want to chase stuff off with the torch and have some fun, you can. I should have told you that already. So, imagine the guts were in here. As a hunter, a really good practice is to get out what most will say inarguably is the choice best cut of meat, and that is your tenderloin. There's a lot of confusion in tenderloin. Some people call the loin the tenderloin. The true tenderloin is right here. It's situated just beyond that pelvic bone to about here. And the way I do that, even when the guts are in it, I'll make an incision at the last rib. Oh, okay, here we go. Right here. Just like that. Just an incision. And I stop here at this rib. Okay? I'm going to cut this. I take this out as fast as I possibly can. And then there's a little sinew here. And I'll cut that. And I'll do one cut right back here. That's it. And then the rest, you just get out with your fingers. Work along the bone. Take your time. Work that along. Let me get all of it. There's your tenderloin. The nice thing about getting these out right away, look how this dries. This is hanging in the butcher shop. See how it has that dry film? That's not quite as tender as a tenderloin could be. There's also transference of some gaminess that comes from fat that tends to be here. This is a lean dough, but the tenderloin is often encased in this like chalky-like fat residue, super flavorful. I would love to cook some up and make a gag, but you won't be able to appreciate the rest of what we're eating today. This is like chewing on a gamey handle. It will coat the inside of your mouth if you cook it. If you eat it, it really alters the flavor of deer meat. If you think, I don't like deer because it's gamey, it's because this is probably in your ground meat. It's probably attached to a piece of meat that you're cutting. This is the stuff that people don't like about it. You're going to find today that it's not going to have that gamey flavor because we didn't include anything of this in what we're cooking. And when I tell you about choice, is a butcher going to make money going through these cuts, as I'm going to do next, and removing chunks of fat like this and there? A lot of that stuff's going to go in a grinder. This is on the extreme lean side of deer. This is a very lean dough. Most deer are going to have a lot more fat, and I think we're going to see that on here. I could already see that her deer has a little bit more fat on it than wherever this one was shot. But I encourage you to do this, and if you don't have a grinder and you don't have provisions to take it to the next level, you can at least do this, get it cooled, and take it to your butcher and do everything else. But there's no reason to give the butcher that cutting meat. That you should be taking, this you should be taking right away, and at least take out the back straps if nothing else. Take those home, give the butcher the rest to deal with, and he'll give you back cuts of meat, because you're gonna see that's one of my favorite ways to eat it. My true favorite way to do it, and I make it every year up at fish camp when I go up there, is I'll take those loins and I'll wrap them in bacon, like crappy bacon, really thin cut, all the fat, stretch it around real tight and just kind of spiral wrap it, and I'll make it on charcoal, and then it just gets that nice crusty bacon on the outside, red interior, and I'll just cut it in medallions, and there's no restaurant where you're going to get a finer cut of meat than making a bacon encrusted backstrap on charcoal. One of these days we're going to upgrade. We're going to make that for you all just to experience my favorite way to prepare the loin meat. So, anybody have questions?
There's some, looks like air bubbles right in her neck right there.
Yep, that's normal. So that was transference of some of the gases that came out when the deer expired, and it got trapped in the meat here. Bacteria can also do this, but this is probably from the lungs expelling air based on where the artery wound is. It's normal for it to get trapped, and when it gets in that connective tissue, it just gets bubbly like that. Normally it wouldn't be there, but that's some of the gases escaping in between like these membranes and things that are all concentrated in the shoulder. So, I go just like did that on this side. And now you just want to listen, right? You hear that? The head's off. It's that simple to take the deer's head off. You don't need anything else. That is the spinal cord right there. And I sever that. That's the spinal cord. Just take them into the other ear. I see what I did here. So it's that simple. If I had a longer blade, I could even do it faster. Our biologists can do it like a serial killer. Like you just boom, and the head's in their hand. It's like one slice of the blade. They're incredible. But when you look here, what are we testing? Right here is the obex. That's the brainstem. That little white juicy part there is what gets tested for CWD. And then the other thing they test are these two glands. One's here, one there. I cut them in half, but that would have been enough for them to do the test. These two go in a little envelope. Our biologists have a little special spoon just for scooping out that little portion of the brain and sending it to the laboratory. And that's it. So you take this, remember I was telling you about always saving like a shopping bag? This is what I do. I put this inside that shopping bag, zip it up, tie it shut. Let's say this had beautiful big antlers and you're taking this to...
Yeah, I can do that.